The old man sat on the wooden bench outside his small house, staring at the setting sun. His hands, wrinkled and veined, rested on his lap. There was a quiet sadness in his eyes, the kind that only comes from a lifetime of memories, some sweet, some bitter. His name was Henry Carter, and today was his 90th birthday. He had lived through wars, seen the rise of technology, and watched the world change in ways he never imagined. Yet, as he reflected on his life, there was one thing, one regret, that weighed heavier than anything else. A young journalist named David had come to interview him. Henry was known in the small town as a wise old man, and many believed he had fascinating stories to tell. David, eager for a good piece, set up his recorder and leaned forward. "Mr. Carter," he began, "you've lived through almost a century. If you could change one thing about your life, what would it be?" Henry chuckled softly. "Ah, son, that's a dangerous question," he said, his voice thick with nostalgia, "because once you start thinking about regrets, they pull you in like a storm." David smiled. "Well, if you're willing, I'd love to hear your story." Henry took a deep breath, looking at the horizon as if searching for something long lost. Then he began. "It was 1953. I was a young man, full of dreams, working at my father's repair shop. Back then, things were simple. You worked hard, you earned your keep, and you didn't ask for more than life could give. But then, I met her." His voice softened. "Her name was Eleanor." David noticed the way Henry said her name like it was something sacred. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, not just in looks, but in spirit. She had this way of laughing that made the whole room light up. She wasn't from our town. She was visiting her aunt for the summer. We met at the local diner, and from the moment I saw her, I knew my life was about to change. Henry paused, his eyes lost in memories. "I was a fool," he continued. "I thought I had all the time in the world." David listened intently as Henry's voice grew heavier with emotion. "We spent that whole summer together. She'd sit in the shop, watching me fix old radios, laughing at my jokes, bringing me lemonade. We'd go dancing on Saturday nights. We'd sit by the lake, talking about our dreams." Henry's fingers trembled slightly. "And then summer ended. She had to go back to New York. She asked me to come with her." David leaned in. "And did you?" Henry sighed. "No," he said bitterly. "I told her I couldn't leave. My father needed me at the shop. My mother depended on me. And deep down, I was scared. Scared of leaving everything I knew. Scared of chasing a life I wasn't sure I deserved." David felt the weight of Henry's words. "What happened next?" he asked. Henry gave a sad smile. "She cried. She begged me to reconsider, but I was stubborn. I told myself I was doing the right thing. She left the next morning." He looked away, his eyes glistening. "And I never saw her again." David exhaled, feeling the ache in Henry's voice. "Did you ever try to find her?" Henry shook his head. "By the time I realized my mistake, she had moved on. She married someone else, had a family, and me? I stayed here, ran the shop, lived a good life, but," he swallowed, "not the life I could have had with her." Silence hung between them. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the porch. "If I could go back," Henry whispered, "I wouldn't have let fear stop me. I would have followed her. Because, son, no amount of money, no amount of success, nothing, can replace the love you let slip away." David sat back, absorbing the old man's words. Henry looked at him and gave a weak smile. "Now, tell me, young man," he said, "do you have someone you love?" David hesitated. He did. A woman named Claire, but he had been distant lately, too focused on his career. Henry nodded as if he already knew. "Don't make my mistake," he said. The wind rustled through the trees as the first stars began to appear in the sky. David sat in silence, Henry's words weighing heavily on his mind. The old man's regret felt like a warning, a message sent across time. After a few moments, David finally spoke. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had gone with her?" Henry let out a dry chuckle. "Every day," he admitted. "I imagine what our life might have been like. The home we could have built, the mornings waking up beside her, the children we might have raised." He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "But life doesn't give you second chances, son. It just moves on, with or without you." David shifted in his seat. "Did you ever love anyone else?" Henry nodded. "I did. Years later, I met Margaret. She was kind, patient, and she loved me in a way I didn't deserve. We built a good life together, had 2 children, but," He hesitated, his fingers tightening slightly. I never told her about Eleanor. It wouldn't have been fair. David could sense there was more. Did Margaret ever suspect? Henry gave a sad smile. Margaret was a smart woman. She knew there was a part of me that belonged to the past. But she never asked. She just loved me anyway. His voice grew softer. She passed away 10 years ago. I miss her every day. David let the silence settle before asking, "Do you think Eleanor was happy?" Henry looked up at the sky, as if searching for an answer. "I hope so," he murmured. "I truly do. But I'll never know. And maybe that's the hardest part." The weight of his words lingered between them. Then Henry suddenly chuckled. "You know, son, the funny thing about regret is that it doesn't just stay in the past. It follows you, it shapes you, and sometimes it even defines you." David considered this. He thought about Claire, about how many times he had put his work before her, assuming she would always be there. Henry seemed to read his mind. "You're thinking about someone, aren't you?" David hesitated, then nodded. "Her name's Claire." "Do you love her?" Henry asked simply. David swallowed. I think I do." "Then what are you doing here, talking to an old man like me?" Henry grinned. David laughed, but there was something serious in Henry's tone. "Son, listen to me," Henry said, his voice firm. "Life has a way of making you believe you have time, but you don't. If you love someone, tell them. If you want to be with them, go. Don't wait for life to make the decision for you." David nodded, feeling a strange sense of urgency rising in his chest. As the evening deepened, Henry leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. "It's getting late, son. You should go." David stood up, shaking Henry's hand. "Thank you for sharing your story." Henry squeezed his hand tightly. "Don't make my mistake, David." David left, but Henry remained on the porch, watching the stars blink into existence. His mind drifted back to the past, to a warm summer night by the lake, to a girl with laughter like music to the life he had left behind. David drove home that night, Henry's words echoing in his mind. The old man's regret had stirred something deep within him, something he couldn't ignore. As he parked in front of his apartment, he hesitated before reaching for his phone. His fingers hovered over Claire's name in his contacts. They hadn't spoken in weeks. His job, his ambitions, they had always come first. But now, he wasn't so sure anymore. Taking a deep breath, he called. "David?" Claire's voice was surprised, a little guarded. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Can we talk?" There was a pause before she replied. "I was just about to go to bed, but yeah, what's up?" David hesitated, then spoke from the heart. "I messed up, Claire. I've been so focused on my career, on my goals, that I've been neglecting something far more important." Silence on the other end. Then, "And what's that?" "You," David admitted. "Us." Claire exhaled slowly. "David, wait," he interrupted. "Before you say anything, I need you to know that I don't want to look back in 50 years and regret losing you. I don't want to be like Henry." "Henry?" she asked, confused. David smiled. "An old man I met today. He let the love of his life slip away, and he's been carrying that regret ever since." Claire was quiet for a moment. "And you don't want to carry that regret?" "No," he said firmly. "I don't, Claire. I love you. And I don't want to waste any more time." A long pause. Then, finally, Claire let out a small laugh full of relief. "It took you long enough." David grinned. "So, dinner tomorrow?" "How about breakfast?" she countered. "Even better." As he hung up, David felt lighter than he had in years. Meanwhile, back at his small home, Henry sat quietly on the porch, looking at the sky. His heart felt heavy, but there was also a strange sense of peace. He had shared his story, passed on his wisdom, and maybe, just maybe, he had helped someone avoid making the same mistake. The past couldn't be changed, but the future, that was still unwritten. The end.